An open-top motor car sits stalled in a narrow, crowded alley. The driver panics, throwing the vehicle into reverse and violently grinding the gears, as the passengers lurch forward, trapped in the idling vehicle. From the bewildered crowd of onlookers, a 19-year-old boy steps onto the running board. He raises a pistol directly at the passengers. 2 shots crack through the summer air at point-blank range, striking the Austrian Archduke and his wife. This street-level traffic accident provided the specific spark for the First World War. Within weeks, the deaths of these 2 passengers would trigger the mobilization of millions. On the morning of June 28, 1914, Sarajevo was a bustling, occupied provincial capital. Austria-Hungary had annexed Bosnia 6 years earlier, and the streets were heavily populated by a tense mix of loyalists and resentful subjects. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir presumptive to the Austrian-Hungarian throne, arrived by train with his wife, Sophie. Acting in his capacity as Inspector General of the Armed Forces, he insisted on parading through the city in full military dress. He chose to do this on June 28th. To Serbian nationalists, this was Vidovdan, or St. Vitus's Day, the anniversary of the 1389 Battle of Kosovo. Parading a foreign military occupier through the streets on this specific day was received as a deliberate, calculated insult. Spaced out along the planned parade route were 6 young men, armed with pistols and timed explosives. They were radicalized students, coordinated and supplied by a shadowy Serbian military intelligence network known as the Black Hand. Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old Bosnian Serb, was one of them. The local military governor, General Potirek, ignored multiple warnings about a potential attack. The Austrian authorities dismissed the idea that a handful of half-starved schoolboys could pose any actual danger to the imperial crown. The 6-car motorcade departed the train station shortly before 10 a.m. As a gesture of goodwill, the Archduke specifically requested that soldiers be kept away from the parade route, leaving only a sparse local police presence for crowd control. The first assassin in line, Muhammad Mehmed Basik, stood near the Austro-Hungarian bank. As the royal car approached, he panicked, paralyzed by the nearby police, and allowed the target to pass untouched. At 10:15, the motorcade reached the central police station. Here, another teenager, Nedeljko Chabrnovic, armed a hand grenade and hurled it directly at the Archduke's open carriage. The explosive struck the folded-back canvas roof of the Archduke's vehicle and bounced off into the street. It detonated 3 seconds later under the wheels of the 3rd car in the procession, wounding over a dozen spectators and military officers. Following his instructions, Kaprdilvich immediately swallowed a cyanide capsule and threw himself over the embankment into the Miljaka River to avoid capture. But the poison was expired. It only induced intense vomiting. Worse, the summer river was only 4 inches deep. He struck the riverbed, breaking his legs, and lay thrashing in the shallow water until the enraged crowd dragged him out and brutally beat him. The grand, state-sponsored conspiracy to strike a lethal blow for South Slav unification had immediately degraded into a highly public, humiliating failure. The Archduke was completely unharmed, and the remaining assassins scattered. Despite the bombing, an angry Franz Ferdinand ordered the motorcade to continue to the town hall, where he defiantly sat through the scheduled welcome speeches. Following the reception, the original itinerary called for a visit to the State Museum. Instead, the Archduke insisted on changing the route to visit the officers wounded by Kabrnovich's grenade at the local hospital. The security detail agreed to take the Appel Quay, a wide avenue, to avoid the crowded city center. But no one informed the driver of the lead car. Following the original plan, the driver turned right off the quay into the narrow corridor of Franz Joseph Street. General Potirek shouted at the driver, who abruptly applied the brakes and attempted to reverse, stalling the engine. Standing on that exact street corner outside Schiller's Delicatessen was Gavrilo Princip. He had abandoned his post after the morning's failure, and by pure, blind chance, the Archduke's stalled vehicle was now sitting less than 5 feet in front of him. Princip drew his weapon, stepped onto the running board, and fired twice. One bullet severed the Archduke's jugular vein, the other struck Sophie. Both would bleed to death within minutes. The elaborate military intelligence plot had already failed. The target was eliminated purely because a single driver missed a memo and turned his steering wheel in the wrong direction. Princip tried to turn the gun on himself, but bystanders swarmed him, wresting the pistol from his grip and subjecting him to a violent beating. Within days, a photograph of a suspect being violently handled by Austro-Hungarian authorities was widely circulated in newspapers across the continent, universally captioned as the arrest of Gavrilo Princip. But the tall man in the picture is actually Ferdinand Bear, a local who was trying to shield Princip from the crowd. Bear was arrested in the confusion, and opportunistic photographers sold the image as the capture of the assassin. This immediate confusion, the reliance on media substitutes for a story moving too fast, captured the early chaos of the afternoon. While police sorted through actual suspects, the public image of the event was already departing from the messy truth of the street. News of the royal couple's violent deaths was instantly telegraphed to Vienna, shattering the complacent summer calm of the Austro-Hungarian elite. Although the assassins were radicalized teenagers acting with a rogue intelligence cell, Austrian hardliners used the crime to justify crushing their troublesome southern neighbor. They drafted the July Ultimatum, a series of demands engineered to force Serbia into a war. Declaring war on Serbia activated a rigid network of mutual defense pacts. Russia mobilized to protect Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia. France was immediately dragged in, prompting Germany to invade Belgium, forcing Britain into the conflict. The bumbling efforts in Sarajevo stand in stark contrast to the industrialized devastation that followed. A farcical street attack gave way to the deployment of machine guns, mustard gas, and sprawling networks of trenches. The mobilization timetables, drawn up years in advance, locked millions of men into a relentless schedule of slaughter that the diplomats and monarchs were utterly powerless to halt. Military historians often argue that the side making the fewest mistakes wins a war. In 1914, the conflict itself was ignited by a sequence of errors so catastrophic they transformed a botched street-level conspiracy into a global tragedy.